Hello EFD squad, today we've got something a little bit different for you. 10 times the football world stood up to racism. France winning the World Cup. So what does France's World Cup win have to do with racism? Well, quite a lot actually. One of the most multi-ethnic countries in the world, France has often faced problems with racism, cultural integration and its colonial past. And the 1998 World Cup ended up being a celebration of multiculturalism for many of those playing and watching. The host nation's star-studded team included the likes of Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Marcel Desailly and Zinedine Zidane. They, along with other members of the squad, had grown up in France after their parents moved from former and current French colonies in Africa and the Caribbean. While other players such as Yuri Djorkaeff, David Trezeguet and Lizarazu represented Polish, Armenian, Argentinian and Basque heritage. The team's triumph was far from a shoo-in. They needed extra time to beat Paraguay in the second round, penalties to conquer Italy in the quarters and 2 goals from defender Lilian Thuram to come back against Croatia in the semis, making their 3-0 battering of favourites Brazil in the final all the more surprising. The French president at the time described the country as united in victory, while the newspapers hailed the team as a symbol for diversity and unity in France. Thuram, meanwhile, never scored it again in his international career that saw him earn 142 caps. But following retirement, he became a UNICEF ambassador and has spoken out against racism on a number of occasions. Muntari and Balotelli booked. Fast forward to 2018 and sadly, it's clear that racism still exists in the modern game. Nevertheless, players are as defiant as ever. In the 2016 season, Sully Muntari was playing for Pescara against Cagliari in Serie A when he was subject to abuse from the minorities of supporters in the stands, including children. The Ghanaian midfielder tried to reason with the crowd and even gave one of the kids his shirt to set an example. But when the abuse carried on, he complained to the ref, who booked him for dissent. Muntari then left the field in protest and his side battled on in the final few minutes with 10 men, leading to a 1-match ban for the player while Cagliari escaped scot-free. And less than a year later, an almost identical incident occurred in France, as Mario Balotelli was booked by the referee for making a similar complaint during Nice's defeat to Dijon. It's not the first time the controversial Italian striker has stood up to abuse from the stands, having plied his trade in Serie A previously. And at the time of recording, the French authorities are investigating this latest incident. The Milan March Off. In 2013, a whole team not only supported their player when he was subject to racism, but did so on the field of play. During a friendly between AC Milan and 4th-tier side Pro Patria, a number of the Rossoneri players, including the aforementioned Muntari, endured racist abuse from the crowd. That was until Kevin Prince Boateng decided he'd had enough, kicked the ball into the stands, ripped off his shirt and proceeded to leave the field in anger. But he didn't do it alone. After speaking to the Ghanaian, Milan captain Ambrosini instructed the rest of the side to walk off the pitch in solidarity, and soon enough both sides and management had departed down the tunnel. Pro Patria were ordered to play their next game behind closed doors as a result, but Boateng later suggested that harsher punishments, such as sackings, would be much more efficient to combat the problem. Stuttgart make a stand. But back in '99, that's exactly what Stuttgart did, and it wasn't a decision that they took lightly. Midfield general Thorsten Legay had helped the club to a DFB Pokal victory in '97 and the penultimate Cup Winners' Cup final a year later. But he was also a supremely controversial figure. Scarred by years of abuse at the hands of his father during his childhood, Legay channeled his anger on the field, making him one of the Bundesliga's most feared players. While this was a useful asset come match day, he also let his rage boil over in regular life, allegedly hospitalising a man after starting an argument with him on New Year's Eve in 1996. Clearly a problematic player, the final straw came when Legay defaced a poster of his Guinean teammate Pablo TM, advertising a soft drink. After finally admitting his crime, he was dismissed by Stuttgart and he made just 4 more senior appearances before retiring in 2001. Dani Alves' banana. In 2014, Dani Alves reverted to a rather creative means in showing his defiance, and it actually worked pretty well. During a match with Villarreal, the then Barcelona right-back was hit by a banana thrown from an opposition supporter. pretty much as low and unimaginative as it gets. But he responded by picking up the fruit and eating it, rendering the idiot's intended insult completely invalid. Unsurprisingly, the moment went viral, and soon footballers all over the world were taking pictures of themselves chomping on bananas in solidarity. Furthermore, following the incident, which occurred when Barcelona were 2-0 down, Villarreal conceded 2 own goals, which were assisted by Alves' crosses, and eventually lost 3-2. A fitting response from the consummate professional, who proved that sometimes laughter is the best medicine. No doubt that racist fan went home in a rather salty mood. Kick it out. Although many players do their best to combat racism on the field, they can't be expected to do it full time. Hence, the creation of Kick It Out. Kick It Out was established in 1993. Coincidentally, the same year Paul Ince became the first black player to captain England. And they set out their stall with a 10-point plan for clubs to follow to combat racism in football. They first came to public attention in 1995 after releasing an advert that features Les Ferdinand and Eric Cantona and pledged to kick racism out of football. Since then, they've used a number of methods to help bring problems to light in the game, from initiating educational programs in schools to publishing articles on the struggles of British Asian footballers. The organisation has faced its own controversy, however, with a number of black players boycotting one of its directives in 2012 in response to their supposed lack of action in the aftermath of the John Terry and Luis Suarez cases. However, they have undoubtedly done some invaluable work in their 25 years. But judging by their report of a 38% increase in racist incidents in English football in 2017, there is clearly plenty more to be done. Hertha Berlin take a knee. Since 2016, one of the biggest rows over racism in sporting history has raged, as quarterback Colin Kaepernick inspired the American football community by protesting police brutality against black people during the national anthem before his matches with San Francisco 49ers. By October 2016, the ongoing protests had become worldwide news, with Donald Trump threatening to change tax laws in order to punish the NFL for what he deemed to be unpatriotic behaviour. Over at Hertha Berlin, they decided to join in solidarity, taking a knee before their match against Schalke. They lost the game 2-0, but the club were applauded for their gesture and backed it up by stating their ethos of a tolerant Berlin and an open-minded world now and forevermore. UEFA links with FARE. Similar to Kick It Out's advertising campaign in the 90s, these days Champions League nights are accompanied by UEFA's very own No to Racism message, delivered to us by the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi and Gareth Bale. It is just one of the results of the European governing body's association with Football Against Racism in Europe, FARE for short, which began back in 2001. Like Kick It Out, FARE had its own 10-point plan, which demanded, among other things, that clubs carried out disciplinary action against racist fans and worked with police to combat racial hatred in stadiums. By 2006, FARE was running over 700 initiatives in 37 European countries as part of its week of action, and have since expanded their operations with the help of UEFA's financial and public support. However, also like Kick It Out, this partnership has been criticised by some, as clubs including Spartak Moscow and CSKA have gotten away with what some believe to be lenient punishments for the racist behaviour in their stands. German clubs welcome refugees. Since 2015, the refugee crisis has seen levels of racist attacks and cross-cultural tension rise across Europe. A number of clubs in Germany have taken action to integrate asylum seekers into the footballing community in a country-wide initiative. First established by the DFL just months after the crisis became an international concern, just 2 years later, 24 clubs are running schemes which provide young refugees with weekly training sessions, while Borussia Dortmund continue to give away free tickets to their matches. In fact, back in 2015, 220 refugees turned up to watch a Dortmund game, a number which outstripped the amount of Syrians allowed into the UK over the previous 18 months, proving that German football institutions are setting an example for the rest of Europe. Cyrille Regis. Almost all of the figures and organisations that we've mentioned on this list so far have been from the last 20 years. But there was one man who was fighting racial stereotypes from the 1970s onwards, the late, great Cyrille Regis. Born in French Guinea in 1958, Regis moved to northwest London with his family 5 years later. He started his career in the non-league with Molesey and within a year been snapped up by high-flying West Brom. A black footballer at the time when racism was still by and large accepted in football stadiums, Regis was an inspiration to black men across the country, along with Laurie Cunningham and Brendan Baston, who came to be known as the 3 Degrees. Regis, Cunningham and Baston simply had to get used to being faced with monkey noises and people shouting the N-word at them every time they entered the field. Before the time of initiatives like Kick It Out, there was nothing to stop this taking place, and the National Front were even allowed to distribute leaflets outside grounds. How did Cyrille Regis try to counter this? By simply being a fantastic footballer. A technically gifted striker with a knack for scoring worldies, Regis became a legend at West Brom and later Coventry. He is etched in both clubs' Hall of Fame and was awarded an MBE in 2008. And after he sadly died from a heart attack in 2018, his life and work were celebrated across the UK. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to know more about those initiatives, check out the link below. And as ever, don't forget to like and subscribe.